Hello and welcome to Quiz Time. I'm Jess, and today I have a 70s quiz for you. So, are you up to date with your 70s trivia, the things that happened in that era? Shall we find out? What was the name of the scandal that led to President Nixon's resignation in 1974? That was Watergate. Which 1975 Steven Spielberg film is credited with creating the concept of the summer blockbuster? Jaws. Name the first video game arcade machine that became a mainstream hit in 1972. Pong. Which band released the 1973 album Dark Side of the Moon that remained on Billboard charts for over 14 years? Yes, it was Pink Floyd. What was the name of the 1977 New York City blackout that led to widespread looting and is credited with helping the birth of hip hop? The Great Blackout of '77. Which female tennis player defeated Bobby Riggs in the famous 1973 Battle of the Sexes match? Billie Jean King. Name the 1979 nuclear accident at Pennsylvania power plant that caused nationwide panic. 3 Mile Island. Which 1977 film made John Travolta a household name with its iconic disco dancing scenes? Saturday Night Fever. What was the name of the first successful home video game console released in 1972? Which gonzo journalist wrote Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas in 1971? Hunter S. Thompson. Name the funk band led by George Clinton that released the 1975 hit Give Up the Funk, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker. It was Parliament Funkadelic, or P-Funk. What controversial fashion designer popularised the punk aesthetic in the 1970s with ripped clothing and safety pins? Vivienne Westwood. Which American city hosted the 1976 Summer Olympics that were originally awarded to Denver before they declined? None. Name the popular 1970s martial arts actor who died mysteriously in 73 just as he was achieving international fame. Bruce Lee. What was the name of the first commercially successful personal computer released in 1977? Apple II. Which disco group had hits like La Freak and Good Times and was fronted by Nile Rodgers? It was Chic. What was the name of the FBI's controversial counterintelligence program exposed in 1971 that targeted political dissidents? It was CONTELPRO. Which 1979 film featured Marlon Brando saying the line, "The horror, the horror"? Apocalypse Now. What high-end New York nightclub opened in 1977 and was known for its selective door policy and celebrity clientele? Studio 54. Name the TV miniseries based on Alex Haley's novel that broke viewing records in 1977. It was called Roots. What was the nickname given to the 50-mile-per-hour national speed limit imposed during the 1973 oil crisis? The double-nicked. Which popular 1970s women's hairstyle featured feathered sides made famous by Farrah Fawcett? It was the feathered look or the Farrah flip. What controversial parenting method book by Dr. Spock dominated child rearing in the 1970s? It was Baby and Childcare. Which band released the 1976 album Hotel California with its enigmatic title track? The Eagles. What was the name of the NASA space station that fell back to Earth in 1979? Skylab. Which Broadway musical that debuted in 1975 featured the song One and stories of dancers and auditioning? A chorus line. Name the first commercially successful 8-track cassette player for automobiles that became ubiquitous in 1970s cars. stereo 8 or 8-track. Which event in 1973 caused Americans to wait in long lines at gas stations across the country? OPEC oil embargo. What dance craze named after a physical activity swept America in the mid-1970s? The Hustle. Which pioneering film director released Nashville 1975 and MASH 1970 during this decade? Robert Altman. What political movement emerged in the 1970s led by Jerry Falwell that sought to influence American politics through religious values? The Moral Majority. Name the first woman appointed to the US Supreme Court in 1979. Sandra Day O'Connor. Which 1970s band featured siblings Richard and Karen and had hits like Close to You? The Carpenters. What design pattern dominated 1970s home decor with its bright, swirling colours? It was paisley, and having maybe a retro resurgence right now. Which American automaker introduced the subcompact Pinto in 1971, which later became notorious for its fuel tank fires? Ford. What synthetic fabric became extremely popular in the 1970s for its stretchy, figure-hugging properties? Polyester. Name the TV game show that debuted in 1976, where contestants bid on merchandise without going over its retail price. Yes, come on down, the price is right. Which novel by Stephen King, published in 1977, featured a Telemnekit high school girl named Carrie White? It was Carrie. What was the name of the first American space station launched in 1973? Skylab. Which television sitcom debuting in 1975 was set in the 1950s and starred Ron Howard and Henry Winkler? It was Happy Days. Name the 1970s exercise program developed by Judy Shepherd Missette that combined jazz dance and aerobics. It was Jazzercise. Which female country singer had a crossover hit with 9 to 5 in 1978 and starred in the film of the same name? That's Dolly Parton. What was the name of the iconic cologne for men advertised with the tagline, "The Mark of a Man," in the 1970s? Brute. Which American actor starred in both The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon? Al Pacino. What processed food item became a sensation after being featured in the 1973 film Sleeper by Woody Allen? Banana splits. Name the major computer programming language developed in the 1970s that's still widely used today. C. Which American city's professional basketball team won the NBA championship in 1970, 1973, and 1976? Boston Celtics. What television news program featuring investigative reporting debuted on CBS in 1968 but became a cultural touchstone in the 1970s? 60 Minutes. Which designer popularized the wrap dress in the 1970s, creating a fashion staple that remains relevant today? Dion von Furstenberg. And your last one. What was the name of the NASA program that conducted joint space missions with the Soviet Union in 1975? It was Apollo-Soyuz Test Project. So, how did you do today? Drop your score in the comments below and, of course, like and subscribe so you get notified every time we post a new quiz. And join us next time on Quiz Time.